The snow fell heavily across the mountains, covering everything in white silence. Deep in the forest stood an old wooden cabin. Its walls were cracked, its roof sagged under the weight of snow, and cold wind slipped through every gap. Inside sat 72-year-old Daniel Harper. Wrapped in a thin blanket, he stared at the dying fire in the fireplace. His hands trembled from the cold. But the freezing temperature wasn't what hurt him most. It was the betrayal. Just 3 days earlier, Daniel had been living in a warm house with his wife, Margaret. For 43 years, he had loved her. He had worked double shifts at factories, missed holidays, sacrificed vacations, and spent decades building a comfortable life for them. Every paycheck went into their future. Every dream he had included her. And now, she had abandoned him. Daniel slowly looked at the wedding photo resting on the small table beside him. The smiling woman in the picture felt like a stranger now. A tear rolled down his weathered cheek. "How did we end up here?" he whispered. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had received wonderful news. A piece of land inherited from his late brother had suddenly increased in value. A development company offered him nearly $3 million for it. The amount was life-changing. Daniel couldn't stop smiling. After years of hard work, he imagined traveling with Margaret, visiting their grandchildren more often, and finally enjoying retirement. That evening, he brought flowers home. "I have a surprise," he told her. Margaret's eyes widened. When he explained the sale, she nearly dropped her coffee mug. "3 million, she repeated. Daniel laughed. "Yes. Can you believe it?" For a moment, she looked shocked. Then she hugged him. But Daniel didn't notice something strange. The smile on her face never reached her eyes. The following days, Margaret became unusually attentive. She cooked his favorite meals, asked about his health, told him how much she loved him. Daniel thought she was simply excited about their future. But Margaret had plans. Plans Daniel couldn't imagine. One evening, she suggested a weekend trip. "Remember that cabin we used years ago?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "The mountain cabin?" "Yes." "Why suddenly?" Margaret took his hand. "I miss the old days." Daniel's heart melted. After decades together, hearing those words meant everything. He agreed immediately. 2 days later, they drove into the mountains. Snow covered the roads. The journey felt nostalgic. Daniel remembered bringing their children there years ago, back when laughter filled every room, back when life felt simple. When they arrived, the cabin looked older than he remembered. But he didn't complain. Margaret prepared dinner. They ate together, talked about old memories, even laughed. Daniel felt happy, maybe happier than he had been in years. For the first time in a long while, he felt close to his wife again. Little did he know, it was all an act. Late that night, Daniel woke up coughing. The cabin felt unusually cold. The fire had gone out. He reached toward Margaret's side of the bed. Empty. Confused, he stood up. "Margaret." No answer. He checked the kitchen. Nothing. Then he noticed something. The front door stood slightly open. Snow drifted inside. His stomach tightened. Outside, the family car was gone. Daniel froze. At first, he thought something terrible had happened. Then he spotted an envelope on the table. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a short message. "Daniel, I spent 43 years waiting for my chance. Now I finally have it. The money is gone. The accounts are empty. Don't try to find me. Goodbye. Margaret." The paper slipped from his fingers. For several seconds, he couldn't breathe. She had stolen everything and left him alone in a freezing cabin, miles from town, without transportation, without help, without mercy. The next morning, Daniel tried walking, but the snow was too deep. After less than an hour, he collapsed, exhausted, cold, heartbroken. He dragged himself back to the cabin. For 3 days, he survived on canned food and melted snow. The temperature dropped lower each night. His strength faded, and with every passing hour, he wondered if he would die there, alone, forgotten, abandoned by the person he trusted most. Meanwhile, Margaret sat comfortably in a luxury hotel hundreds of miles away. She smiled as she checked her bank balance.
Milio.
all transferred into accounts she secretly controlled. She felt victorious, free. For years, she had resented Daniel, not because he mistreated her, but because she believed she deserved more. More excitement, more luxury, more adventure. Now she finally had it, or so she thought. On the fourth day, something unexpected happened. A pickup truck stopped outside the cabin. Daniel heard an engine, then footsteps. The door burst open.
Dad.
Daniel looked up. His eyes widened. Standing there was his son, Michael. Behind him stood Daniel's daughter, Emily. Both looked terrified.
Dad.
Emily rushed forward and hugged him. She immediately began crying. Michael knelt beside his father. "We've been searching everywhere." Daniel couldn't speak. Emotion closed his throat. His children had found him. Back in the city, doctors treated Daniel for hypothermia and exhaustion.
Fortunately, he survived.
But what happened next shocked everyone, including Margaret, because Daniel had a secret, a very big secret, one he never told his wife. Years earlier, Daniel had created a trust fund, not for himself, not for Margaret, but for his children and grandchildren. The inheritance money Margaret stole represented only a fraction of his assets. The majority of his wealth remained protected, legally unreachable, safe. Margaret never knew. She believed she had taken everything. In reality, she had only stolen part of it. When lawyers investigated the theft, more surprises emerged. Margaret had illegally forged documents, moved funds she wasn't authorized to control, and violated several financial laws. Authorities quickly became interested, very interested. Soon subpoenas arrived, then investigations, then frozen accounts. Margaret's dream life began collapsing,
Piece by piece.
One afternoon, she received devastating news. Most of the stolen money had been recovered. The remaining funds were locked pending legal proceedings. The luxury lifestyle she imagined vanished overnight. Panic replaced confidence. Fear replaced greed. For the first time, she realized she might lose everything. Desperate, Margaret called Daniel. The first call went unanswered. Then the second. Then the third. Finally, weeks later, Daniel agreed to meet. They sat across from each other in a quiet office. Margaret looked exhausted, older, defeated. "Daniel," she whispered, "I'm sorry." Daniel remained silent. "I made a mistake." Still silence. Tears filled her eyes. "Please, we can fix this." Daniel looked at her calmly. After everything she'd done, his voice contained no anger, only sadness. "You didn't make a mistake." Margaret lowered her head. "You made a choice." The words hit harder than any insult. "You left me there to die." She began crying. Daniel continued. "I would have given you anything. More tears. But you wanted everything." For several moments, neither spoke. Then Daniel stood. Before leaving, he said something Margaret would never forget. "The greatest loss isn't the money you stole." She looked up. "What is it?" Daniel sighed. "The family that loved you." And then he walked away. Forever. Months later, Daniel's life looked completely different. His children moved closer. Grandchildren visited every weekend. Laughter returned to his home. The warmth he once searched for in Margaret now came from the people who genuinely cared about him. One snowy evening, he sat by a fireplace, surrounded by family, watching his grandchildren play, listening to their laughter, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. Michael sat beside him. "You okay, Dad?" Daniel smiled. "Yes." His son nodded. "You deserve happiness." Daniel looked around the room, at the smiling faces, at the people who stayed, the people who searched for him, the people who loved him, and he realized something important. Sometimes the people who betray us reveal the people who truly care. Sometimes losing someone isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of a better one. Daniel raised his cup of hot cocoa. His family joined him, and as snow gently fell outside the window, he felt grateful. Not for the money, not for the inheritance, not for the possessions, but for the love that remained when everything else was gone. Because, in the end, greed had left Margaret alone. But kindness had brought Daniel home.